And thus I heard a cry from collectors everywhere as the weeping of their wallets proceeded. Hey guys, Comic Relief Crusader here, and to all of you collectors out there, well, things are going to get a little bit more expensive with, figure collecting. And not just Transformers, but more than likely a lot of other toys out there that one may procure on their adventures in Toyland. This bit of interesting news from Yahoo Finance. It seems like, well, the Hasbro CEO has something to say about, well, the rise of figures going up. Here's the video.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about the business of toys. I'm looking at this toy in real time, this Transformers toy. I mean, like, look, we're in this world of like, there's a trade war, Chris. I don't have to tell you this, but you know, how does this get made in this era of trade war? Like, how much more will that cost? You know, this cool sword, how much does that cost? Like, and how do you keep this thing a profitable venture for a company like Hasbro?
Well, a tariff is basically a cost on the product, and costs on products will ultimately get passed through to the end user. So, you know, our preference would be that we minimize tariffs wherever possible because we're very focused on affordability and getting the lowest possible price points to our consumers. So something like this action figure will go for around $20, $25.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And so it's usually made in markets like China or Vietnam, increasingly India and Indonesia, where labor costs are lower, where there's a relatively sophisticated supply chain that can take care of like the IP that's associated with it, and can also, most importantly, take care of the safety concerns because these things are ideally oriented towards children.
Do you tell, now we have tariff, 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, 10% more on China. Do you tell toy designers, hey, you have to redesign how a product is done to bring down costs? Is it that intricate, I guess?
Well, we'll do a couple things. So we'll work with our suppliers and try to wrest whatever cost savings that we can out of them. We can do that in a couple different ways. We can negotiate with them and try to get costs down as much as we can, but recognizing they operate on very slim margins, like 3 or 4%. We also can do consolidation of the vendors that we work with so we can drive scale, and that lowers the average unit cost of things. We can look at the design of a product and try to cost optimize it, which we've been doing very actively for the last 3 years. And usually when we do that, it's not an approach of shrinkflation, like, you know, I used to buy a half gallon of ice cream and now I get
but this Transformer used to come with 2 arms, now it has 1.
So we don't do that. But what we try to do is we try to be clever with how the internals are designed, how the mechanisms are designed so that it's still fun, but maybe we can, you know, trim off a couple things that the user won't notice and get the prices down. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about tariffs in the neighborhood of 20% plus, that's a cost that we can't fully accommodate and will have to be passed on.
And how much does that change the economics of the toy business?
Well, I think it depends on what the elasticity is, and that depends on the category. So, you know, a higher end kind of action figure that appeals to kind of multiple demographics, both kids and adults, that tends to be a more inelastic category. Like you can you have a little bit more pricing power. For things that are oriented towards like kids and where parents are on a budget, you know, you'll tend to have to really work hard to try to.
So what essentially this means is that seeing how Trump has gone through with the tariffs yesterday, with the reciprocal tariffs to come on April 2nd for, places like China, it may impact Vietnam. Both, with both of these tariffs will impact basically not just the Transformer hobby, but a lot of other hobbies as well. You know, if you happen to collect G.I. Joe or, anything else for that matter. And Chris Cox as you saw from the interview, specifically relates to Transformers toys in this quick interview that you just saw. And he kind of confirms two things: that the additional costs due to tariffs will be passed on to the consumer, and to avoid a high price hike on toys targeting mainly kids, toys that target collectors will have a higher price increase. So that kind of insinuates that the Generations toy line, since that's the type of toys, Transformer toys, that targets all the ages, not just kids, Hasbro believes that demand from collectors are more inelastic, meaning that it's likely to change the price, or actually less likely to change the price, if the price increases. And I mean, you know, if you happen to have a family on top of that, that, you know, kind of gets these figures for your toys. You know, a family can't increase their budget for buying toys for their kids. And if that's the thing that's going to be happening, well, then sales are going to drop. But Hasbro has been doing this for years, increasing the prices of their figures for many collectors out there, and there weren't any tariffs then. So if this is going to be the excuse that Hasbro is going to be using, not just for Transformers collectors or G.I. Joe collectors, but for everything that they sell, you're gonna be more than likely paying even more as their excuses keep on continuing. So this means that the rise in price on figures which target collectors will be disproportionately larger than the increased tariff cost. So collectors will have to make up for the increase in cost of all lines, not just what they want to collect. And that's why even if tariffs against, say, Vietnam, which some of these materials come from, won't come into effect just yet, if ever. And they added the cost of the tariffs against China for all other products Hasbro manufactures there will be passed down to you, the collector. So this is what's going to be happening, and he kind of confirms that, you know, in the interview. You know, in the past 3 years, lowering production costs in Transformers line, although Chris hopes that it wasn't really noticed. But, you know, if you're a collector out there, you've definitely noticed. And especially seeing how I have a daughter that does like some of these figures. Some of these figures are vastly overpriced as it is. So, but, maybe this might be a lot of less collecting for a lot of people out there. But that's just my opinion. We'll have to see what happens, seeing how the U.S. doesn't really export much as it does import much. So, but that's just my opinion. I'm the Comic Relief Crusader, and we will be talking to you soon on a lot of other stuff. So stay tuned.